All right, what we'd like to talk about now is how to create an invoice in QuickBooks in detail. So if we go to Customer and Create Invoice, we can also access the same thing from the Home menu. We can go to the Home menu and Create Invoice. So encompasses the same exact thing, right? We have a invoice that we've name here. We can type in whoever it is. And it says that there is an outstanding customer estimate that's available. So if we say OK, because we have previously created an invoice, an estimate, then it will populate that, and we can populate that, we can put the entire estimate in there, or we can put a percentage of the estimate that we created in here and say OK. So that all of a sudden populates that customer with half of 50% of the total amount that we said we would bill for this project. By the way, when you do this, you initially create an estimate, and in an estimate, it does not post to the general ledger. You can create 1,000,000 estimates and it has no effect on your financial statements. You just simply create estimates, and then if they turn into a customer or it turns into a job, then you can go right here and create the invoice from it on a percentage like we just did, or 100%. Or when at the time that you did what I did, which was go in and create an invoice, it will automatically appear right here. Okay, so we go and in an invoice, all of this detail has now been put in, and you can see that none of it is subject to sales tax. Because this person would clearly be in have a resale certificate or not be subject to sales tax because it's wholesale type work. But when you want to set up sales tax, let's just say that this was not right, and some of this work or all of it was in fact subject to tax. Because this is just a normal reconstruction project for the end user, the owner of the home. So it would charge sales tax according to the sales tax rate that you have set up for that sales tax customer. How do you do that? You go into first, you have to create the sales tax code, and in the item list, if you go down to the bottom of the items list, you can see that there are sales tax items down here. So if we look at a sales tax item, you simply enter in a name, like the location, and then who's what kind of tax and what location is it paid to, like a city or a state or something like that, and then you put in a rate. Say OK. After you've created that sales tax rate, like the San Domingo's sales tax rate is 7.5, right? After you've created all those rates, then you go to the Customer Center and you identify each individual customer. You can go into their account, go to Sales Tax Settings, and say that when they are taxable by default, they are subject to which tax. If they have a resale number and are not subject to tax, you can put it right there and call them non-taxable. So once you've set up the sales tax code and then identified if the customer is taxable, then you can go and create invoices for that customer. And so like here, we're in this invoice and we've identified it as taxable, and it's going to accumulate sales tax owing for the invoice and also for the company that will pay it. All right, going across the top of the screen, you have options where you can create or save or delete invoices, create copies. I want to talk about memorized transaction. If this was an invoice that we were going to do time and time and time again, as a for instance, I'm in the accounting industry and I bill my customers a certain fee per month to do like month-to-month bookkeeping or payroll service. And so when I do that kind of repeat business, I memorize the invoice that I have created for the customer so that it will come up again and again very easily for me. So you can easily go in and memorize this invoice and tell you that you want to add it to your reminders list or automatically enter the transaction for you like once a month. So if I say automatically once a month on the next time is going to be X, and I want to do this maybe 12 months if it's a 12-month contract or just continuously, then I say, okay, it takes a picture of that invoice as it exists, and it makes that available in the memorized transaction list. And at a later time, I can go to the memorized transaction list, double click on it, and say, save it. And it invoices the customer automatically. So it's a way, if you do a lot of invoicing of a lot of customers, you can save a whole bunch of memorized transactions of all these repeat style invoices and very quickly do all your invoicing for the month. Even if they're not the same amount, you can save the very nature of the invoice, and then when you go to the transaction, you can go into the invoice and you can change it a little bit and then save and close it, and it will memorize that transaction for that customer, and I just build that customer again. Okay, so memorize transaction list. It's a wonderful, cool feature for getting work done faster in QuickBooks. All right, so going back to creating an invoice in QuickBooks. When you create an invoice, you have the ability to add costs, which we did at the very beginning. So if you have this customer come up and you're like, I know I did work for this customer, then if there were work available, it would show up on a screen here, and you could actually go and pull up what work was done on a screen like this. You could, if you had time from payroll entry that said that you had an employee that did hours and at a certain rate per hour that they are billable at and what they did, if it existed here, you could put a check mark on it, say OK, and it would automatically appear in the invoice. You can also say, I need to be reimbursed for work that I did. And when you create a sales or a bill, you can identify that it is billable to the customer, and then you can charge it to the customer on an invoice. If you had to like pay for supplies, you turn around and charge the customer, where you might also put a markup on the things you bought. If you charge mileage to the customer, you have the ability in QuickBooks to keep track of mileage on your vehicles, enter mileage, and when you enter mileage for a vehicle, for a customer, or for any work you do, you can identify if it is applying to a job for that you traveled to and from. Then at the time that you go and enter that time, you will have that appear there. And you can say that you're going to bill them at a rate of X amount per mile and say OK, and then that will appear on the invoice. You can also, from your item list, if you have items that you bought specifically for a customer, they will appear here at the time that you buy them. You charge them to that customer, and then they will appear here, and you can click on them and add them in. So that's a way to create invoices faster for when you do it. Okay, we will talk later about these areas here. But that's the sales tax process and a lot of detail on creating an invoice.